Guruve Gaura Chandraya Radhikaya Tadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpaturubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Shri Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Dandavat Pranam, devotees. So, I'm trying to keep up with the questions and answers as they come in to sort of not let them get backlogged. There are still some questions that I have not really addressed because they're pretty elaborate and it would take some time. And so I'm trying to balance taking questions that are a little easier to answer straight out, and then making sure I've also done the research necessary to give a full answer to those questions which are more complicated. And as I've mentioned almost every time I do this, I do appeal to those senior devotees or those devotees who would like to assist in answering any of the questions. That way there's multiple perspectives and insights and reaffirmations or corrections if I make any mistake. So the question that came in, and this was yesterday, was from a young lady who asked, I've never revealed the names because I've never gotten permission that, yeah, you can go ahead and use my name. But anyway, it's from a young lady devotee who is asking the question. She is not married, so I'm not completely sure of the genesis of the question, but the idea was, what is the situation of devotees who are married to non-devotees? So I think it's sometimes we have to look at how we're couching things as well. So someone may not be involved in Vaishnav practice, right? But they may have another faith base in their own lives. So we wouldn't say non-devotees. We would just say someone of a different faith. Now, there are situations where people have no faith base and maybe no interest at this particular point in time in a faith base. That's a different category. And then obviously and hopefully not, the case would be that someone is antagonistic towards a spiritual life, be it Krishna consciousness or anything else, and therefore non-devoted to God in any way, form, or fashion. So then the nomenclature non-devotee would be applicable. So in any of those cases, for a devotee who's aspiring on the path of bhakti, there's always going to be a little bit of a drawback if your partner cannot share the deepest part of your existence. Any devotee who has taken to Krishna consciousness in a very serious way, then the practice of bhakti, the subsequent realizations from that practice give rise to changes in consciousness that a partner who does not share the path may find difficult to appreciate, because we do go through a transition from stage to stage in bhakti. It's very imperceptible in many ways, and you can't see the subtle transitions. I do remember actually while I was working as a musician, there was a family who the wife had taken to the path of devotional service, and the husband was also a very spiritual person. But the rate of transition in the heart of the young lady who had taken to the practice was really quick. So her sort of, morphing from maybe the young lady that he had met to who she was becoming, and very rapidly was maybe a little bit much to digest, right? From our perspective as devotees, we may say, oh, this is wonderful that somebody's blossoming, and even blossoming at a very fast pace. But we need to keep in mind that if we have a partner and that partner is not on the same path, then that blossoming appears to them as actually maybe moving away, or maybe changing, or maybe becoming someone that they did not initially develop a relationship with. So all of those things need to be considered when we have either interfaith relationship or a faith non-faith relationship, if that's the case, and be able to make the kind of adjustments that would be necessary to, first and foremost, because it is our first and foremost duty to pursue our spiritual goal. So we need to make sure that the relationship works in order for us to accomplish that. And at the same time, if it's a relationship that someone feels that they want to have, then the nuances and the adjustments have to be made so that the forward progress on the path of bhakti is not checked. And similarly, it may be, if someone is involved in another faith, that their faith is nourished, because in Jaiva Dhamma, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has discussed, if somebody's involved in any kind of upadharmic means a path pursuing God, but may not have come to the path of the realization of bhakti. Bhakti is not really a faith. Bhakti is a nature. It is the nature of the Atma, right? Bhaj datu iti sevayam. The nature of everyone, regardless of faith, is to serve God. That is an inherent quality. I'm not speaking here about the inheritancy of Swarup and all these things. It's a whole different conversation. So what I am speaking is that the nature and intention of every jiva is to serve Bhagavan, to serve God. So the faith is only a particular expression of that, right? So someone may have a particular way that they practice serving God, and it may not be exactly in accord with how we're practicing in bhakti. So if you're in a relationship like that, then, as I was, my original point, then you have to work out the nuances of that relationship such that that person is nourished, obviously, in their growth of faith, and at the same time, your forward progress in bhakti is not checked. And it's not always an easy thing, because people have very strong feelings about whatever their spiritual or religious practice is. So, and we should not expect any different. Now, it may be ideal if that person's faith has enough of a opaque window that they can look through that and see bhakti as something which is actually related to their own faith, right? And then gradually that may allow a transition. Oh, well, I'm not seeing that there's a difference between what I practice and bhakti. There's some ritualistic differences, some day-to-day pragmatic expressions that are different. But the nucleus of what is bhakti, loving, serving God, becoming absorbed in fulfilling the goal of life, which is to realize God, if they start to resonate with that, they may just come to the path of bhakti and not making a change from their previous religious faith base, but realizing their own faith has now grown into a deeper realization. So that's sort of an ideal thing, right? But that's not always the case. Many people, if they're practicing Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, whatever it might be, and some things are obviously not philosophically resonant with the path of bhakti, but nonetheless, if you end up in a relationship that's like that, then it may be that person's strength of conviction in what they're practicing won't allow that sort of opaque window that they can look through and say, oh, well, I see how what I was doing really is fulfilled in the practice of bhakti. So if that's the case, then real deep kinds of conversations have to go on about how we will navigate our coexistence, because bhakti is, again, not just a religious faith, it is the core of life for those who are practicing bhakti. And so we have to sit down with that significant other and navigate how we'll practically walk this path. And there's a lot of practical considerations. If you are practicing bhakti, there's some things which would just be completely pratikul to bhakti. The eating of flesh and the cooking of flesh in your home, right? Perhaps things that deal with, more lax views about intoxication, right? Or even especially dealings with intimacy and sexual activity. Because on the path of bhakti, there is some guidelines around how we deal with that. And that may be the most difficult hurdle in an interfaith relationship, where the views around intimacy are different. So certainly anybody who's trying to navigate a relationship that's interfaith, and it's what to speak of if it's not really interfaith, but it's, that category where the person has no faith base and you're trying to negotiate a relationship with them and you're completely in a deep kind of spiritual pursuit, that can be really, really difficult. And there can't be any shying away from sitting down and having very serious and perhaps, I'm trying to find a word, perhaps, make or break discussions about how you'll proceed. And that's obviously better done at the beginning of any relationship. So you don't want to wait until perhaps there's been, sort of involvement with someone before you come to talking about very practical issues around your spiritual life. So yeah, I'm hoping that this, gives some kind of answer to the question. I would say, is it impossible to have a relationship with someone who's not following the path of bhakti? It is not impossible. We've seen examples of it. Is it difficult? I would assume it is. I've never had that direct experience, but I would assume it is. Because also in spiritual life, husband and wife are complementary parts of a unit moving towards realization of the goal of love of God. Right? Any husband, he does not see the wife as his dasi, she's Krishna dasi. Right? And being Krishna dasi, there is no prospect for seeing the wife as my object of enjoyment. This is real in bhakti. Now, there may be some evolution to that perspective, but that's the truth. That's the reality. And it works the other way around as well. For the wife, the husband is not an object of enjoyment. He's actually Krishna and Guru Das. Right? So their joint walking of the path of bhakti is a mutual nourishing of their unfoldment. So that definitely requires some maturation to get to that point, because we have, since time without beginning, been accustomed to enjoyment. And the crux part of enjoyment is interactions between male and female. And we may take up the dharmic process of marriage in order to satisfy that. And then we have to, in the process of, in the path of bhakti, we have to begin to work through weeding out those previous impressions of enjoyment. And this can't be done artificially. It can't be done artificially. The actual way to remove these tendencies is to taste something in bhakti. If there's no taste coming in bhakti, just as Bhagavad Gita is mentioning, raso vrajam rasopiyasya param drishyana bharatate. If there's no superior taste, there's no question that, I'll artificially be able to, somehow avoid, sensuality and other kinds of, happiness experienced in married life, unless I'm tasting something which can serve as a solid replacement for that. That's just being real, right? Or there'll be repression. Repression gives rise to a lot of times anger, confusion, and so many different things. So this is also not a statement. Oh, Mukunda said, listen, don't be repressed. Just do what you want to do. Please don't put that on me, right? I'm saying, practically speaking, that my saying here, and it might be easier coming out of my mouth at, going on 70, my late 60s, than it is if you're 21 or 25 and being married. So, point being, still, no matter what age group you're in, if you decide to get married and you're in the path of bhakti, you have to start to take these kind of considerations, because other than that, then the path of bhakti will not unfold in terms of realizations and elevation in the same way if you have no sense of control. And so also we can realize everybody has a different karmic portfolio, and the process of detachment from sensuality is not the same for everyone, right? So no blame, no fault should be assessed to anyone. No criticism should be, in fact, nobody should be criticizing anybody anyway, because Srila Gurudev, and all our acharyas, not only Srila Gurudev, says that we should be very careful to watch our own barometer. In other words, check your own pulse, right? So it's not a thing where we should be looking at others critically or trying to assess their, evolution and their detachment from sensuality and all these things. We're just speaking here what is siddhantically true regarding making progress in bhakti, right? So how you work that out, if you are in grihastha life, and the ideal way is for husband and wife to mutually grow together, and if there starts to become a taste in bhakti, then there's sufficient satisfaction in the process of bhakti that both husband and wife are happy, satisfied, and mutually nourished. And therefore the ability to see my husband is Krishna Das, my wife is Krishna Dasi, becomes practically real, right? I don't know if that's right combination of the word, but it becomes more real, right? Because there's actually a substantive basis under which both persons are happy and nourished and so forth. If that's not there, then there has to be adjustments and conversations and other things to try to get to that point, right? So I guess I went a little bit over just answering the question about interfaith or non-devotee-devotee marriage, and even speaking within grihastha life as devotees, how we have to constantly be in tune with making the adjustments necessary, since we are a unit, in allowing our bhakti to move forward. If not, then, bhakti will become a back burner thing, and the tendency to enjoy will become prominent. And at some point, we will start to actually compartmentalize life as, oh yeah, here's my religion, it's called bhakti, and here's my grihastha life, which is kind of meant for my enjoyment, and so forth, so on. And so things will start to take that kind of shape. And as I mentioned in the beginning, that bhakti is not really like another religion or faith. Bhakti is the essential nature of the soul. So there is some stunting to the soul's growth if we don't get out of the paradigm of compartmentalizing, here's my religion, it's called Krishna consciousness, here's my family life, and I've earned and deserved the rewarding of the efforts I've put into material life, in terms of financially or whatever the case might be, and therefore the tendency to enjoy is there. Now, we are not tapasis or vairagis as a practice either. So one should live appropriate grihastha life under the conception, my husband is Guru Das, my wife is Guru Dasi and Krishna Dasi, and we are mutually trying to attain the highest form of human endeavor to become Palya Dasis of Radhika. This is so what to speak of such a thing. To work together just to get out of the material world is an accomplishment, right? But we're aspiring, I want the highest thing. So what can make love deeper, right? Because there is some pretty in devotee relationships. Because Rupa Goswami said, what is this verse? Tadati pratigrinati guyamakiti prichiti bhukte bhojayate chaiva sadvidam priti lakshanam. So there's some lakshan of priti in devotee relationships. In the material world, there's not really love. Right? Kaitavam rahitam prema na prema manushaloke. In the material world, not really love. There's mutual exploitation, mutual agreements to mutually exploit each other, right? I don't want to make that sound harsh, but basically in the material world, pretty much, you know, what is passing as love is mutual exploitation, overtly or covertly, right? Because it's not possible to have unconditional love among conditioned beings. So, but in bhakti, the sharing between devotees has the quality of priti lakshanam, right? So, but the criterion under which that priti is manifest is the dati pratagrinati, the exchanging of gifts. And what gift is better than the exchange of confidences, which is expressed in the next line about the realizations of bhakti. And bhukte bhojayate chaiva. So also the serving of prasad and the receiving of prasad. Again, what is the greatest type of prasad? Here, taking prasad to mean mercy, then to receive and to give Krishna's mercy and Guru's mercy in various ways, one to another. So in this way, the atmosphere of priti does exist among the grihastha family. The children are seen as also Guru Das and Dasi. And in this way, there is so much love and affection in the home that there's such a sense of fulfillment and nourishment that the illumination coming from that kind of priti lakshanam, it helps to dissipate the darkness of self-interest in simply sense gratification. But that even has to be gradual. That has to be worked gradually together, making this possible. And then in that case, it's also bhakti. Because 11th Canto Bhagavatam, Jatta Shado Matkateshu Nivigna Savakarmashu. That even though there are still obstacles on the path, if we can mutually nourish each other's Jatta Shraddha Matkatashu, the mutual nourishment for Harinam and Harikatha, then still, gradually Krishna, Gurudev, they'll bestow their mercy and the realizations of the kind of fulfillment in Grihastha life that comes from serving together, serving Guru and Krishna and Vaishnavas together, that will become very tasteful. And therefore there'll be, even if you're unable to give up the other things, they'll gradually become distasteful. Right? Just like in that verse, Jatta Shraddha Makateshu Nirvigna Savakamashu. Veda Dukatmanam Kamam. Right? Parityagyopi Anishwaraha. We may be unable to control, unable to give up those things, but still, we have strong desire. And then Krishna gives a recommendation. Tato bhajate mam prita. What is this verse? Tato bhajate mam prita. Sharalu dridhanishchaya. Jisamanastamam kamam duko darakam chagarayan. Then Garayan means with a great heart of remorse, regret, right? Please, Gurudev, please Krishna, please help me to advance in my bhakti and be genuinely able to serve, be genuinely able to taste something in bhakti, right? So the remorse about those things that you struggle with, that will arise in the heart. Sometimes devotees, they say, listen, we don't want to live a guilt-filled life. No, in bhakti, right? Not debilitating guilt based on ahamkara and your self-esteem and your self-assessments of yourself. No, here, remorse means, or repentance means, oh, how much love and affection I have towards Gurudev that I want to be able to to have Vishramba Seva to Gurudev. And that Vishramba Seva will only come when my heart can be crystal-like and I become a fit recipient for the moods emanating from the heart of Gurudev. This is really Vishrambena Seva. And Gurudev wants this so much for me. And he's the person, or she's the person, who has unconditionally loved me for the first time ever. We've not in the material world experienced any unconditional love until we came in contact with Shri Guru. So there's some motive here. If you want love, this love, it was truly unconditional. Antaryami has unconditional love because Antaryami has been with you through every single karmic unfoldment in terms of different bodies, everything, throughout time without any beginning. The external manifestation of Antaryami is Shri Guru. And Shri Guru also is there life after life once the connection is made. Right? So, and nobody has shown you unconditional love like that. So we want that radiating in our heart. And in order to do that, we pray to the illumination of that kind of love to dissipate the darkness of self-interest and other sort of things. And then that kind of unconditional love from Gurudev doesn't come without taste. Right? The realizations that you get in bhakti are very tasteful. Right? And if there's some struggle still going on, that struggle, that fight is worthwhile. And that feeling of, Garyan means that remorseful feeling about inabilities to deal with certain things, that is helpful to bhakti. So we don't want to give that up. So I went probably way above and beyond just answering the question. In a synopsis form, I would say that if you are in a relationship or contemplating a relationship or have been in a relationship where there's not one accord in terms of the path that you're following, so that means whether it's interfaith or whether it's a question of you being on the path and somebody not being on any spiritual path, then you have to have very, very serious conversations that are not dominated by your material heart, but are dominated by your inner heart. Inner heart means your soul's interest. And you'll find in the long run that both you and that person will be much more happy. All right. Sometimes you get very practical questions, not always deep theological, philosophical questions, and that's also appreciated because we have to practically navigate the path of bhakti. It is not only a theological or philosophical or intellectual pursuit. It's actually a life activity. So, Vancha kalpaturubhyascha kripa sindhuvevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Radhe Radhe.